Before we begin, take a moment to support the channel. If you enjoy calm cultural stories like this one, consider liking the video and subscribing. For decades, Canada has been described through familiar symbols, wide landscapes, polite conversations, stable institutions, and a climate that quietly tests endurance. Yet the recent wave of people relocating north is not driven by scenery or stereotypes. The movement is rooted in something less visible, unfolding in ordinary routines rather than dramatic promises. It begins with a contrast many Americans notice almost immediately, a subtle shift in how daily life feels before anything is consciously evaluated. Initial impressions often form in unremarkable places. Streets appear calmer without feeling empty. Public spaces feel functional rather than performative. Interactions are efficient but rarely sharp. There is no theatrical warmth, yet there is a steady absence of friction. Many Americans recognize that nothing extraordinary is happening, and that realization itself becomes striking. Life appears organized around continuity rather than acceleration. This atmosphere reflects a deeper cultural orientation. Canadian society tends to prioritize predictability over intensity. Systems are designed to reduce volatility, even at the cost of speed. The expectation is not that life will constantly improve, but that it will remain reliably manageable. For Americans accustomed to constant optimization, career growth, personal branding, visible success, this stability registers as an emotional recalibration. Ambition exists, but it is less publicly displayed and less tightly linked to identity. Everyday habits reinforce this mindset. Workplaces emphasize consensus over confrontation. Success is acknowledged quietly. Social status is signaled through restraint rather than assertion. Even disagreement is often softened, framed as adjustment rather than opposition. Americans frequently observe that confidence in Canada is not announced, it is assumed or simply left unspoken. This creates an environment where standing out feels optional instead of necessary. Over time, these patterns accumulate. The absence of constant comparison alters how time is experienced. Progress feels slower, but also less exhausting. The pressure to constantly prove usefulness diminishes, replaced by an expectation of consistency. For many Americans, the shift is not about gaining something new, but about losing a persistent background tension they had learned to ignore. Canada's appeal, then, is not rooted in novelty or escape. It emerges from a cultural architecture that quietly lowers emotional volume. The appeal grows not through excitement, but through relief, a relief that becomes noticeable only after it has already settled into daily life. As daily routines continue, this quieter structure becomes more visible in small, repeated moments. Healthcare appointments feel less transactional. Public services move with measured pace rather than urgency. Even delays carry less emotional charge because the system itself is not framed as a battleground. Many Americans notice that problems are acknowledged without being dramatized, treated as logistical issues rather than personal failures. The social climate reinforces this moderation. Conversations rarely revolve around extremes. Political opinions exist, but they are often expressed with caution, as though social harmony carries equal weight to being correct. In workplaces and neighborhoods, cooperation is normalized to the point that it becomes invisible. The absence of overt competitiveness does not eliminate ambition, but it reshapes it into something quieter and more internal. Success becomes something to maintain, not constantly expand. This difference is especially noticeable in how stress is distributed. In American culture, pressure often concentrates at the individual level. Responsibility is personalized, and resilience is celebrated as a moral trait. In Canada, stress is more evenly absorbed by institutions and social expectations. Systems are imperfect, but they are designed to buffer impact rather than amplify it. For many Americans, this redistribution of pressure feels unfamiliar, even disorienting at first. Typical interactions reflect this design. Customer service exchanges are polite without enthusiasm. Colleagues rarely compete openly for recognition. Neighbors respect personal boundaries while remaining quietly available. There is an underlying assumption that no one should be pushed too far, too fast. Emotional restraint is not coldness, but a form of mutual consideration. Over time, Americans often realize that this environment changes behavior almost unconsciously. Decision-making slows, reactions soften. The urge to constantly evaluate one's position relative to others weakens. Even frustration takes on a different texture, less explosive, more contained. Life feels less like a performance and more like a sequence of manageable obligations. This transformation is rarely immediate or dramatic. It unfolds gradually, shaped by repetition rather than revelation. The cultural shift does not announce itself as improvement. Instead, it reveals itself through the absence of strain, through evenings that end without mental exhaustion, and mornings that begin without urgency. The appeal of Canada, in this sense, grows quietly, rooted in a collective agreement that life does not need to be constantly intensified to feel meaningful. As months turn into years, the cumulative effect of this cultural environment becomes clearer. The rhythm of life reshapes expectations, stability stops feeling like stagnation and begins to resemble a form of freedom. Many Americans discover that when fewer emotional resources are spent navigating conflict, comparison, and urgency, more energy remains for ordinary living. Hobbies feel less like escapes and more like extensions of daily life. Rest no longer carries guilt. This shift also alters how identity is constructed. In the United States, identity is often tied to momentum, what is being built, achieved, or surpassed. In Canada, identity tends to settle around reliability and presence. Who someone is matters more than what they are racing toward. For Americans, this reframing can feel subtle but profound, especially as external validation loses some of its urgency. The result is not a perfect society or a universally better life. Frustrations remain, opportunities can feel narrower, and progress may seem restrained. Yet the emotional climate rewards steadiness over spectacle. Many Americans come to understand that Canada is not offering a dream, but a framework, one that quietly supports life without demanding constant reinvention. This is the real reason so many people are moving to Canada. It is not the scenery, the politeness, or even the policies. It is the collective decision to lower the temperature of everyday life. In a world that often equates intensity with importance, Canada offers an alternative, a culture that treats calm as a shared resource rather than a personal luxury. In that environment, ambition does not disappear, it simply becomes less noisy. And for many Americans, that silence is not emptiness, but space to exist without urgency, to progress without spectacle, and to live without feeling perpetually on edge.